Hey y'all, my name is Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. Wyatt. I am really excited today because we have a very special guest with us on today. We have Kence Anderson from Composable on the show today. And Kence, we're going to go into all of the awesome applications of Composable, but also the importance of giving the SME the voice in the manufacturing conversation. But before we get into that today, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and let us know a little bit more about the amazing Kence Anderson?
Sure, thanks. It's good to be here with you. My background is actually in mechanical engineering and worked actually on some factory floors. I was an intern at Ford Motor Company and worked the plant where they made the air conditioning compressor that I was working on for 2 summers was made in Connorsville, Indiana, a plant there where
Very cool.
As I remember, I think the town had like 16,000 people or something in it, and some large proportion of those people worked at the plant. So I've been around manufacturing for a long time, and that was the first time I had really ever seen, what large-scale manufacturing was in the U.S., Midwestern U.S. But I've spent actually most of my career in software. After college, I went to software startups in Silicon Valley or the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where I've been for the last 20 plus years. And this is the 8th startup that I've worked on. And for the last 7 years, across one startup and Microsoft and now the second startup, Composable, I've been focused exclusively on how to use AI agents to upskill and transfer knowledge and share knowledge across the manufacturing workforce for high value applications. It's been very exciting.
Yes, with a large part of the manufacturing workforce retiring that is not already retired in the past few years, preserving tribal knowledge is quite a hot topic on this show. This is a constant conversation, I feel like, amongst our peers and our community because the need is so critical, right? I can't wait to get more into that. But can you share with me something before the show here in that you are a musician? And I love that. Do you want to share with what instrument you
Sure,
are a
I
musician
love
of?
I love jazz, and I play jazz and a bit of gospel music on the saxophone. I'm an alto saxophone player.
I love that. That's so cool. I mean, that's like so classy, right? Very, very cool. I think it's awesome because you don't, everyone plays guitar, it seems like, right? Or whatever. But I think that's a really cool instrument to play. Do you like music? Are you a music lover?
Oh, I love music of all kinds. My mom and dad met playing music together. My dad was a classically trained singer, and my mom was his accompanist. That's how they met. I have a lot of amazing musicians in my family, and we kind of grew up with music, classical music, gospel music, and I come to really, really love jazz music. It's my personal.
I love that. I listened to a lot of classical music growing up as well. I'm actually a classically trained pianist growing up.
No
My
kidding.
parents
That's
had
amazing.
me in all that.
Who's your
Yeah.
favorite composer?
Not very. So I mean, this is really kind of cliche, but I'm really a big Beethoven fan. I
Okay.
do. I like all of that, all of his symphonies and sonatas. I really enjoyed that. Moonlight Sonata is one of my favorites to play.
Nice.
And then I used to always love to play his Fifth Symphony as well, or at least an excerpt, right, of the Fifth Symphony, the famous
Nice.
excerpt. Not very many people know that about me, so
That's really
that's kind
cool.
of fun to share. So my parents were not classically trained musicians. They did love music of all kinds, and I kind of grew up that way. So now, of course, the inaugural official question of Workforce 4.0 is kind of a fun play on that. But Kence, I got to know if we were out somewhere And we just happen to be doing karaoke.
Yes, of course.
Just happenstance. What song are you playing? What's your song?
I'm going with James Brown. I feel good.
I love that. I love that. That's also a
Pretty.
very classy song.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows it. Not a lot of complicated words. I can pull it off.
Nice, nice. That's a good karaoke song too, because the more audience participation I feel like you get in karaoke,
Yeah, that's
the
it.
better the song choice, right?
100%.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that. Well, you mentioned some about working for IBM and then, of course, for Microsoft and growing a large part of your career with that organization. And now, you've kind of started out on your own. You've built this company called Composable, which you're the founder of. And I think it's really interesting to always get the founder's perspective on workforce and empowerment. So, because I feel like that's a driving motivator for us to start our own companies
Yeah,
and the
100%.
entrepreneurs out there. So, what does that mean to you when you think about workforce and you think about empowerment?
Yeah, it means two specific things. One is there's 100 million engineers in industry. I studied
Mm.
mechanical engineering. There's mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, electrical engineers, industrial engineers, process engineers, controls engineers. There's others, but the folks that are making and moving things in our economy, the engineers that are designing, the factories and the machines and running the operations. That's 10 times as many folks as there are software engineers on the planet. But in a lot of cases, especially with AI, the engineers who frankly designed and built everything that we use kind of get left out of the conversation. They
Mm.
need some special, data scientist or computer scientist to come in and do AI for them, or maybe even they need to rent an AI model for someone. So I was really motivated to put tools to build teams of AI agents in the hands of engineers. An engineer workshop, they're going to build you something. And I think that's true for AI also. But then there's also the operator side of it. I remember going to a plant back in 2018. It was a plant for a large chemical company. I met a lot of these operators, and they were talking to me about how it took 7 years of on-the-job training for them to get certified as senior makers for this job. I mean, there were 7 years.
That's a long time.
It's a really long time. And there were folks that were going to night school and getting chemical engineering degrees during their training and during their on the job training. And it really helped me understand that there's a tremendous amount of hard fought expertise that these people have and these companies have. And, we call it tribal knowledge, subject matter expertise, a lot of different things. But I thought to myself, well, what if we taught these folks a methodology for how to train AI, how to teach AI specific skills, and what if they were involved in the process? Then I wonder if that exchange of teaching and learning could actually decrease the amount of time it takes to learn some of these skills. And then maybe you have
Mm.
so imagine you're in your on the job training and you're teaching AI skills and you're learning. I have a methodology called machine teaching, which is really about how to teach AI specific things and make it expert at specific things. And you learn that at the same time as you're learning from the AI because it's showing and demonstrating things to you, kind of like we use Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze. And then maybe you bring a team of AI agents into the the control room with you. And I think that could also help with recruitment. I mean, there's lots of statistics out there about how the millennials and younger generations don't want to work in a factory. But if you say to a millennial or Gen Z, Gen Alpha, hey, I want to enable you with a methodology for how to train the most advanced autonomous AI out there on the planet, then it's a different proposition. Yes, it might happen to be in a factory, but that might be an entirely different value proposition for recruiting the younger generations into manufacturing.
Absolutely. I say that all the time as a millennial. That was, of course, encouraged to go and get my 4-year degree. I've even joke about it to some extent because I think my 4-year degree is like in communications or public administration or something like that. And I mean, I had all very good intentions of working for government and kind of following my parents' footsteps and all that. And then I walked into there's a Magna plant in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and it's got a lot of automation in it. And I walked in and saw the robots and was like, no, what is this? Like, no one told me that there would be robots here. So, and then beyond that, encouraging technology in industrial settings, because everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's so used to a certain level of technology in their day-to-day lives. So that's been huge. But when it comes to tribal knowledge and really capturing that information from the older generations of the workforce, it's been a real bottleneck in recruiting for me personally. So
That's
I
interesting
can
to hear. And how have
absolutely
you
see that.
approached recruiting for these highly specialized jobs that require a lot of subject matter expertise?
Sometimes I've relocated operators.
Hmm.
I've relocated operators for plants, like startup plants, greenfield sites
Yes.
that maybe they didn't have the existing skill set already. I've found operators in other
I've heard of
towns.
similar things. I was talking to a company that was saying one of their lead operators for a particular process retired. It was after like 30, 35, many years, wanted retirement. But then he left and they were like, hey, everyone, it's not that they didn't have any expertise. The operation just declined in its quality significantly without him there. And then he ended up joining as a contractor 3 weeks later, as a highly paid consultant.
Yep.
3 weeks later, because they still needed
Yep.
that expertise.
So my old it's so funny that you say that, because my old boss at the career center, she ended up leaving and she went to Logan Aluminum, which she doesn't work there anymore, but that's a plant in Russellville, Kentucky. They do cold roll aluminum. And she told me some odd years ago, when she started there, we are hiring back our retirees and we are paying them massive consulting
That's
fees.
exactly what I'm hearing as well. And so people are getting excited. And one of the main missions of Composable is providing a vehicle, providing a platform, a tool set, workbench, where engineers can teach agents these high value skills that they learn from the operators. Now, I should say something that's very important. I don't believe in AI that just looks at a bunch of data and is able to do something like work in a factory. I don't believe in that philosophically. It's in the same way as I'm not qualified to work in a steel mill, and as far as I know, and you're not qualified to work in a chemical plant. It's not because we're not intelligent. It's because we don't have the expertise. So, I could be an expert driver, but I could be a terrible chess player. That doesn't have anything. My driving ability doesn't really help me in chess at all. So I think it's really important to know that I don't believe that the right approach to AI is, well, let's just give the AI a bunch of data. Let's see, it's going to learn everything. I don't think it will. What I do think is that AI that learns specific skills could be extremely valuable. So if I can sit down and interview, and I've done this many, many times for Fortune 500 companies, they bring me in and say, you design or build an AI to help us optimize a specific part of the plant or some specific piece of equipment or something. I say, I'm not even going to be there unless the person who does that job makes that decision for a living. The operator is sitting there and I can talk to them for 2 hours because I need to interview them and they need to tell me about the skills and the strategies. It's the same as if I was interviewing a world-class football coach or chess master. They'd be telling me about the strategies that they use and why they use different strategies at different times. And you have to respect the operator and you have to respect that expertise so you can extract it. But once you extract it, and if you involve them in the entire process, then it is possible to create these kind of digital copies of some of that expertise that is not used to replace anybody. It's used to augment everybody. So the novice operator gets that digital agent sitting next to them, helping them do their job better. 60%, 60, 65, maybe even 70% of the agents I've ever designed, the only reason that they were commissioned is for training younger operators. That's it. But they could also be used to give expert operators a second opinion. And finally, they could also be used to give expert operators back some of the time they need to do higher value tasks. So a lot of times your expert operators are doing things that junior operators should be able to do, and that means they're not doing some other high value thing, troubleshooting something, reinventing a process, doing something that is a better use of their extreme, expertise.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's such a great use case for that in training and developing your less experienced staff in place of, having somebody that is more senior level just being hands on the entire time because they have critical functions that they have to do that can't necessarily be addressed by someone that's more entry level. And it's really about business continuity, and really being able to develop a future plan for your company and make sure that you have retained staff and that you're recruiting more
Yeah,
staff.
I like the phrase business continuity, not from your field. It might be a term from your field, but I like the term. I worked with a company, National Oil Varco. They make oil field equipment. And the reason why they commissioned one of these multi-agent systems, this team of skilled expert agents, is because they wanted to be able to hire younger people and train them,
Mm.
right? So they're saying their way of addressing the shortage of talent is we want to be able to hire younger people, maybe folks that just finished their GED, folks that, a variety of different folks that they felt like they aren't able to hire right now. But if I had this digital skilled expert that could help them succeed, then I could hire more people, younger people, and train them and upskill them.
Absolutely. Um, Yeah, and you can really, implement technology to cover that gap. But it is about continuing your business past your current state and for the next generation of the workforce. And I like to always kind of compare it to like leaving a legacy for, thinking about your children and your grandchildren,
Sure.
that whole thing. Um,
What is a legacy?
so
I can imagine it would be frustrating. I've never been an operator, but I can imagine it would be frustrating to spend your whole professional life becoming amazing at and maybe being the best in the
mhm.
world at operating a particular type of machine or running a particular type of process, and then retiring after you've earned it and not being sure whether there was someone coming up after you that was going to be able to continue that kind of excellence. That would be frustrating, I think.
Oh, it would be. I mean, it would be, especially for some of these places like that town in Indiana that you were talking about, and that was the economy.
Exactly.
Everyone in the town worked it. So I grew up in a very similar situation where most of the town worked at Fruit of the Loom in Campbellsville,
Mhm.
Kentucky, and that plant was shut down in
Oh, wow.
1996. And when that was shut down, because everyone worked there,
Right.
it was really devastating. Kind of living through that experience has also inspired me to take workforce development really
Well, I have
serious and
to
really
ask
look
you, is
at
that
it
kind of
as a
what inspired you to
continuity
get into
issue.
workforce development?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty passionate about it for that reason because you lose a plant like that and everyone is like dependent on it. And I mean, since then the town is mostly recovered. There's other manufacturing plants there. Other things have come in. There's an Ingersoll Rand there, for example. But it took, 3 years at least, if not longer, to upskill or retrain that workforce that was existing
That makes sense.
and get them back where at the level where they needed to be to earn the income that they were earning and to provide for their
Right.
families,
And one
more
of my
importantly.
hopes, I remember doing some work with actually it was an agency in Louisville, actually, Kentucky, and they were working on workforce development and the vision there, we just really sketched out a pilot, but with the vision there was, is there some universal skill that you can teach an operator such that it's easier to transfer between different types of operators? Like you said, if I was working at a
Mm-hmm.
Fruit of the Loom plant, but now I have an opportunity to work at a Ingersoll Rand plant. One of the ideas that we work on at Composable is this idea of machine teaching, because I write about this in my book. Expertise is different from teaching. If you give me a second to explain, I'll tell you what I mean. Most people that are really, really good at something can't teach it at all. And so there's this kind of quadrant. Imagine if there's one axis, which is how well you can teach something, and another axis is how well you can do something. So you have some people that are experts that can't teach. The example I give in my book was Michael Jordan was famous for being this, one of the best basketball players, if not the best basketball player of all time. He, at least at the beginning of his career, was a little bit difficult to coach and work with because he couldn't pass on. He couldn't describe to his teammates how to be like him. He wasn't a teacher. He was an expert. But then you've got some people that are experts and teachers. This happens with operators too. Some operators, they can't tell you how to get better. They can just be good at it. But then you have some folks that are experts and teachers. Michael Jordan's famous coach, Phil Jackson, was this. He actually won an NBA championship as an NBA player, so he could play New York Knicks. But then he was a great coach, so he was both. And then you have some people that are just great teachers that could teach almost anything. I would put Bill Belichick in this category, the famous Patriots coach. He wasn't nearly he wasn't an accomplished football player the way Phil Jackson was an accomplished basketball player. He's a teacher. And so my philosophy is, what I think is, if you can teach people how to teach, like if there was an operator that was really, really good at understanding what makes an operator in any field good and be able to interview them and codify the things that they're doing and the strategies that they're doing, that's transferable. So that's not, specific to Fruit of the Loom or BMW or 3M or Ingersoll Rand. That's a universal skill. I don't know let me test that out on you. Is that something you think that might be interesting from a workforce development perspective?
Absolutely. I think so. And I think also, true engineering fashion, we should document that. And then that way there's definable metrics behind it. Because I think a lot of like what we do with training and workforce development, it's documented, but I think sometimes we're documenting the wrong thing. Okay. So it's kind of hard to make some of these more abstract ideas like soft skills or things like that. Right. It's kind of hard to make them more concrete.
I understand what you're saying. Because if they're not well documented or memorialized, it's difficult to pass them on and difficult to measure whether they're actually there or not. Where
yes,
the core skills of an operator, well, it's measurable. Like, did the yield go up or down? Did the quality metrics improve or decline? But something like the ability to teach other operators, that's not something that's really measured.
That's right.
Okay, I understand.
But I think that would be another great use case application for Composabl. If you could perhaps do that with the SMEs that you work with.
And that is a big part. I mean, I can honestly say every successful project that I've ever done started with a subject matter expert interview, and I developed kind of a way to ask those folks questions that will help me understand the process and help me codify the expertise, but also that will respect and promote them. Because you don't want to go in and I've hardly ever had anyone, feel threatened. Like I was surprised. I thought, oh gosh, here's the AI guy, and people are going to think I'm trying to take their job or I'm trying to steal their expertise. But most people don't think that way, and I think that's because if you respect the person and if you speak to them in plain language, without a lot of jargon, no AI jargon, and if you involve them in the process, I think they feel like, oh, wow, we're doing something together.
Yes. Well, it gives them ownership.
Absolutely. 100%. It's even better.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that that's a great way you could also almost document this process and then turn it into like its own standard, its own SOP down the line, right? Yes. For hiring.
Yes.
You can incorporate that in your recruitment process.
I love that point, because maybe in the future, SOPs can be less about this is what you do in every situation and more about this is how you practice this skill. This is how you teach this skill, right? Because if I have to document every single thing you have to do, well, there's going to be a manual, of 700 pages, and no one's going to read it anyway. But if I can document, well, here's the things you have to practice. If you're playing basketball, you need to practice the jump shot, you need to practice the layup. I'm not going to tell you about where your arm needs to be at every second, but you need to practice the jump shot, and you need to practice the layup. And at every plant I've ever been to, they described skills that were, to me, just as analogous as the jump shot and the layup or takeoff and landing and flying or different football plays, offense and defense. And if we can codify things at that level, okay, that's something that's easier to transfer.
Absolutely. I love that. But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts as well. And when it comes to maybe some of these overcoming some of these talent challenges, that you've seen and observed in your years of experience, and given the current state of the manufacturing landscape and hiring and all of that, what do you think that are maybe like some top three things manufacturing companies can do today to get that ball rolling?
Yeah, I like that question. I like that question. One of the things that, the narrative that big tech, and I used to work at a big tech company, so one of the narratives that you hear a lot is, oh, you're going to have to go measure everything, and then you'll analyze everything, and then you'll be able to predict things. And there's value in that. Don't get me wrong, but I take a different approach. I'd say you first start by looking for the highest value skills that you could live without. Like
Mm.
what skills out there on the factory floor, if someone retired or left and went to another company, you would be in a lot of trouble because it takes a long time to learn. It's highly valuable. It makes a huge difference whether you do it well or kind of well. And I'd start there. Say, these are the things that drive our business, and we need to figure out how to codify these things
These are
way
your
before you get
must-haves.
to how you're going to codify it. Figure out which ones they're going to be. Then you start thinking, okay, well, how am I going to codify this? And I would say you have to figure out who's going to be doing this, because the biggest challenge I found with manufacturers is, and innovation, is not that they don't want to innovate. It's that they're too busy moving things. We pay
Yes.
manufacturers to make things and then to move them to us, to deliver them to us, not to innovate new processes. So, for example, I was working with a major oil manufacturer, and we built one of these AI, highly skilled AI systems that generated gold. And it took us 11 months to build the system. And they told me that's not the problem. The problem is we got lucky this time because the SME was actually available to work on this project. Usually the SMEs aren't available because they're busy doing what they're supposed to be doing. In the case of an oil company, they're generating energy resources. And they said, so Kence, can you help us figure out how to eliminate a methodology? And they said, well, maybe, and they came up with a novel idea. They said, well, maybe we should have all of our interns and first year engineers learn this methodology, this innovation methodology. That was their who. But you got to find out who your who is. Are there going to be certain people?
Mm.
Is there an innovation department? Does everyone have a certain percentage of time? Every engineer have a certain percentage of time they get to work on innovation, but you need to figure out how you're going to carve out time for the right set of people to codify these key skills. Okay, so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, well,
That's
then you
right.
have to figure out what technologies are going to help you to do this. And that's non-trivial. I encourage you to look for platforms, and I encourage you to look for technologists that will explain things to you in plain language. You shouldn't have to hire a PhD in AI or data science. I mean, I've designed 200 of these, kind of advanced AI, intelligent automation systems, and I don't have a PhD in AI, right? So you don't need that. What you need is people to explain things to you in a way that your organization can understand. So if you first identify the skills, and that's your expertise, no one can do that for you. Then you carve out who's going to work
Right.
on it. And then you start working with some people. There's great consultants out there. There's great startup companies out there. There's great long-term experts out there that can help you map the right technologies to help you codify those really high-value skills.
Absolutely. And I love that point that you make about, you don't have to have somebody that, if you're working with a partner in technology, you don't necessarily need somebody that is a PhD or speaks at a super high level and can't explain things in the terminology, the verbiage that you would use. And
Yep.
that's a really interesting point that you make, because I think that is such a red flag, right? If I'm having to chat GPT or Google the words,
Yeah.
that can be really difficult,
Yeah. It's not perfect.
especially
And
with your frontline workforce.
especially with the frontline workforce, they're not going to feel included in that.
Yep. Not at all. I can imagine some scenarios where that would not fly over very well, and that's putting
Exactly.
it politely. So yeah, I love that. That's all great advice that you share. And to me, it's really super surprising when I'm working with companies and recruiting and their inability to really concretely identify the skills that they need.
Right. And that's their
So
gold mine. That's That's their KFC secret recipe, is those skills to run their manufacturing plant. In some cases, there's a small number of those kind of plants and machines in the whole world.
Yes.
That's the manufacturer's bread and butter, is the proprietary skills that run that business.
Absolutely. And then you get the job description, and it's, again, I mean, usually at a mid to high level as far as literacy. Like if you're reading it, it is mid to high level. There's not any of those concrete skills listed. So that's, all great stuff, Kence. I really appreciate that. I love this conversation. This is not the typical Workforce 4.0 conversation. So this has been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. But I think it's really fascinating, your story and how you kind of got from point A to point B in your own career transit, we'll say.
Yeah.
Can you share with us a little bit more about that and, really your origin story, your why for starting Composable, and what you're passionate about with industry?
Yeah, I'm an engineer at heart, and I'm passionate about empowering engineers. And I was fascinated by this idea that, oh wow, there's AI that could actually make a difference in what I studied in school, in manufacturing, in a factory, not just on the stock market or in the back office or moving documents around, but actually could help in manufacturing. That's completely fascinating to me, that we could empower a whole generation of engineers to do things that have never been done before. That's what wakes me up in the morning. That's really what Composable, the whole point of Composable. I was lucky enough to fall into it, when I was working at a startup called Bonsai, and I was every week traveling to some manufacturing. I mean, in 2017, 18, 19, part of 20, I went to every kind of chemical plant, steel mill, mine, factory, and it was amazing. I got to talk to hundreds and hundreds of executives, managers, SMEs, operators, process engineers, and understand what the real challenges were. Really, just Composable to me is just an opportunity to build something to solve some of those problems that I saw. I recognized the patterns and solved some of those problems I saw day in and day out for 4 years of being on the road.
That's awesome. I love that. Do you have any advice? Like, what if somebody's listening to the show and they're hearing you speak about all these amazing things that you've done, and maybe they're early on in their career? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, Michael Jordan had a great quote, let the game come to you, or a philosophy. And almost everyone that I used to be really uptight at the beginning of my career, like, what's my career going to turn out as? Am I going to make impact? But everyone I met that had a career that was really, really what I felt like was amazing, I'd say, how'd you get here? They're like, I don't know, it just happened. One thing led to another, led to another, led to another. And it's okay if you don't find the thing that you're really good at, that really excites you, that the market really wants, immediately. It takes time. And you just keep moving in that direction. I mean, if you told me, oh, you're going to be designing industrial AI systems for factories, 20 years ago, I'm like, what are you talking about? But I love it, and it's great. But it was this kind of winding journey. So I'd encourage folks to develop your superpower, find out what your superpower is, and start exercising it in different ways. The path will unfold for you.
I love that. That's amazing advice, and I feel I resonate with that deeply, given my own winding career path. So I appreciate that. Well, Kence, this has been such a joy to have you on with us today. Before I let you go, is there a good point of contact for you that you'd like to share?
Sure. So folks can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love to network on LinkedIn. It's my, LinkedIn is my first name, Kence. So it's LinkedIn/n/Kence, and, drop me a DM, and love to chat with you.
I love that so much. Well, thank you so much, Kence. This has been an amazing conversation. I cannot wait to see you at Automate. You are going to Automate, yes?
Absolutely. I'll see you there.
Awesome. Sounds great. And for everybody listening, thank you so much. And we will see you, hopefully, in Detroit at Automate.